We have 40 seconds till 4:20.
This one's our special Monday joint.
Oh yeah, happy Monday, everyone. Hope you all had a good Mother's Day.
I got some. Oh, we're at the bottom of the jar there.
Oh, do you have a lighter? This lighter works.
It's disappearing.
This one's dead. That one didn't have that much to begin with.
Oh.
10 seconds. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy 420.
I don't know. Countdowns.
Wow, this one's nice.
Smells like a cherry farted.
And it's dank. It does smell like cherry. Cherry and like a little CBD. Like that mentholy CBD taste.
Oh, yeah, you get the CBD has like a, you say mentholy, I think it's a minty.
Kind of. I don't know how else to describe
An
it.
earthy. No. Yeah, an earthy flavor. No. Anyways.
All right. Well, you want to see
We
how
made it.
I'll try to start with an easy clip because we get to end with the fun clip. Nancy Pelosi is like a legitimate 100 millionaire, and have you ever wondered how she got so rich?
She's been in the house for how long? How many years?
I don't know, for a long time, but
I would
it's
say
like
that's how she got really rich.
by just being in politics for that long. Well, Jimmy Dore says
What are those things called? Not consignment, concessions.
Bribes.
Well, you're not supposed to, if they haven't been convicted of anything like nefarious or whatever, it's kind of saying they've been accused of, or what is it called? You can't. No, I guess it's just, yeah. Isn't it a nicer term?
Sorry, I'm trying to get my
Oh,
meme
good.
board
You're
up.
not supposed to make money off of concession.
Well, I don't know. It's like there are quotes that say like anyone who gets rich in politics is a crook. Anyways, okay.
Is that why everyone says all the politicians are crooks?
I think they are, honestly. It's like, what has Nancy Pelosi done for anyone?
If the system is crooked.
Yeah. And so Jimmy Dore goes over how Nancy Pelosi accepts her bribes, and I thought it was pretty enlightening.
Oh, how the money gets made?
Let's take a look.
You want to know who Nancy Pelosi really is? This was from back when 60 Minutes still would do a real report once in a while.
60
Before
minutes.
they started having ex-Fox News producers run their show. Here's 60 Minutes. Watch this.
It's but one more example of good things happening to powerful members of Congress. Another is the access to initial public stock offerings, the opportunity to buy a new stock at insider prices just as it goes on the market. They can be incredibly lucrative and hard to get.
If you were a senator, Steve, and I gave you $10,000 cash, one or both of us is probably going to go to jail. But if I'm a corporate executive and you're a senator and I give you IPO shares in stock, and over the course of one day, that stock nets you $100,000, that's completely legal.
So it's, if you directly hand over cash, that's a bribe, that's illegal. But if you give them equity in your company, that's legal.
That's how people negotiate pay and stuff, and they say there's, like, that's why they're like, well, it's what,
Right,
it's
but
like
but what how like
a bargaining chip.
what kind of legislation has like Nancy Pelosi passed, and how much did it cost? It's like how much did she sell out for just to get a little richer?
It's little by little by little.
Little by little, up until
obviously,
$100 million that she shoves.
Yeah,
with.
I know, that's what I say. But how many years has she been up there?
How
about
many
the other
years has she
people?
been selling out? It seems like her whole life. Let's keep going with the clip.
Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and her husband had participated in at least 8 IPOs. One of those came in 2008 from Visa, just as a troublesome piece of legislation that would have hurt credit card companies began making its way through the House.
So she participated in 8 IPOs, and who knows how much money she spent. Because usually, if you want to participate in IPO, you have to buy in,
Be an investor.
right? But then if you're just getting the equity,
Like you work for them as if you're part of their.
yeah. So 8 times, including Visa.
Maybe she does have a position with them.
Well, they ask her, so let's take a look at that.
Disturbed by a potential conflict of interest, the Pelosi's purchased 5,000 shares of Visa at the initial price of $44. 2 days later, it was trading at $64. The credit card legislation never made it to the floor of the House.
64. So that's like you.
What's 20 times 5,000?
I can't do the math real quick. Okay, let's just keep going with the clip. I can't do the math.
Congresswoman Pelosi also declined our request for an interview, but agreed to call on us if we attended a news conference. Madam Leader, I wanted to ask you why you and your husband, back in March of 2008, accepted and participated in a very large IPO deal from Visa at a time there was major legislation affecting the credit card companies making its way through the House. And did you consider that to be a conflict of interest?
I don't know what your point is of your question.
Well, my point is that you're a criminal.
Yeah, so there's Visa legislation going through the House, and she participates in their IPO, and you did the math, and she made $100,000 in one day from just that 5,000 shares going from 44 to
They
64.
paid her $100,000 to pass. Wait, what?
Is that how much she made or how much she paid?
So she paid 40. That's how much she made.
Yeah, yeah, right.
44 per share, 5,000 shares, and then the next
So they're
day,
asking
64.
her, isn't there a conflict of interest by doing that when there's legislation going through the
She's
House
like
for
a
this?
dear God. I
And
was
now,
like, that's how it's always done.
yeah, it's like the two cringiest things are when politicians are trying to fake compassion, and then when politicians are pretending to be dumb.
Yeah, when they fake.
And this is like the
like,
second
what
one.
are you talking about? It's like, wait a minute, aren't these guys, a lot of them lawyers and stuff? And
Let's see what Jimmy has to say.
That's the point. The point is you're a criminal, and you know it. And that's the look Nancy Pelosi gives when she's being called out for her criminal behavior. And that's when she's lying. That's her lying face.
Karen.
I don't know what you're talking.
Is there some point that you want to make with that?
Well, I guess what I'm asking is, do you think it's all right for a speaker to accept a very preferential and favorable stock deal?
Well, we didn't.
And you participated in the IPO.
Well, I have many
And at the time you were
investments, but that
Speaker of
doesn't-
the House. You don't think it was a conflict of interest or had the appearance
No,
of a
it was
conflict
not.
of
It
interest?
doesn't. It only has appearance if you decide that you're going to have elaborate on a false premise. But it's not true, and that's that.
I don't understand what part's
how
not
is
true.
it not true?
Yes,
You made the
that I would
Yeah, it's
act
public.
upon an
Money.
investment. Yes.
Congresswoman Pelosi pointed out that the tough credit card legislation eventually
So there you go.
Yeah, she's like the false premise of what you purchased the shares. Like it's
like these numbers aren't made up. 5,000 shares at 44, and then like I don't know.
do you know what it is?
You smell that? What is that? What's that smell? Money. I smell money.
All right, let's see what Jimmy has to say. We still have
I'm gonna go run for
minutes in this,
Congress.
you should.
There's your
we
sociopathic
need more
criminal,
Asians.
Nancy Pelosi. Became a 100 millionaire while she's been in Congress. She is complicit in war crimes, which is why
Participated
George
in
Bush
8
and
IPOs.
all the people who ordered torture were never prosecuted because she was the person who was supposed to do it.
Every American
And Julian
by default
Assange
is
revealed
complicit
she was
to war
complicit
crimes.
in war crimes in the torture. And that's why they want to kill Julian Assange, because he turns up the dirt on all these people. He exposes all their war crimes. That's why they want to kill Chelsea Manning. He exposes their war crimes. She exposes their war crimes. Quite a video, huh? About her. You know, you thought it was just a few senators who did that with the coronavirus when they got the inside information. Then they sold all that stock and bought other stock.
Been since Reagan.
That's
Nothing
Since
happened to
Reagan.
any of those
That's
people.
how-
Nothing happened to her. They're all criminal. You think
It's
that she's
technically
less
legal.
criminal than Trump? She is not.
None of the people who've been up there for
And
that
she is,
long.
you know who's the happiest person in the country that we have Trump? Nancy Pelosi. Because she could go, look at that. Look at the village idiot. Look at he said something stupid about bleach. Look, he said something else stupid. Look over there. Don't look at what I'm doing. Don't look at how I'm screwing you as hard as Mitch McConnell could ever screw you. That's your female Mitch McConnell.
Yeah, I think any politician that's kept us in war is definitely complicit in war crimes. It's like, why are we at war still? Nancy
economy doesn't
Pelosi,
crash.
Obama. Thanks, Obama. Okay,
It's our economy over people's lives. Always, always, always.
so thanks, Jimmy, for always enlightening us on.
Look at her face, though. Come on. Oh, gosh.
Okay, so that's not, I guess. So class warfare has started
Who says who?
in the United States. Says me, I
Oh,
guess.
okay.
I mean, just look
You're
at
like,
it.
it's begun. We've declared. Or
Well-
who's going to declare that?
Yeah. So let's take a look at this because it's like the stock market is having its run and we have record-breaking unemployment. Our government has shown who they're willing to spend trillions of dollars on and who they're willing to forget. And so it seems like just the political climate and the way like the biological crisis is going is just separating people further and further into these classes that they're in, which is basically like the working class and then people who don't have to worry about it.
Well, that's the biggest disconnect.
Yes. So let's take a look at this clip because Crystal and Sagar from The Rising go over it really well.
One of the things we've been covering here is the insane disconnect between how the stock market is performing, in particular, how the wealthiest among us are doing right now, versus the millions upon millions who are losing their jobs, filing for unemployment. 40% of small businesses telling the Chamber of Commerce they may have to permanently close in the next 6 months. And ProPublica had a great piece digging into exactly this dynamic that I wanted to highlight. It's titled "The Bailout is Working for the Rich." And they talk about how on Friday, the government reported 20.5 million people lost their jobs in April, marked a period of unfathomable pain, worse since the Great Depression. Also on Friday, the stock market rallied. By the way, the S&P 500 is now up 30% from its lows mid-March. And specifically, if you want to know who is winning and who the government has most responded to, private equity has gone up through the roof. Shares of Apollo Group, giant private equity firm, soared 80% from the lows. Stock of Blackstone, another private equity behemoth, has risen 50%.
Yeah.
So it tells you everything you need to know. Remember, I saw that tweet that was like, the stock market's just a graph of rich people's feelings.
Yeah, and
there you go.
I think this is an
What did she say?
She said the stock market is just a graph of rich people's feelings. But yeah, during a time of record-breaking unemployment, it's like just very few assets are going up, and it's like these private equity firms, like these private companies that just own a lot of like real estate and assets and like
Yeah,
the
and all
market.
they do is kind of like swap them, and that's how they meet. But it's like if you
Well,
know
no,
what I
I'm-
mean? They
the
don't
issue here,
do a
though, is
lot
that-
of money exchange. There's no actual money exchanges in all of these big deals.
Okay. Well, yeah, let's keep going with this
So-
clip though, because they'll. I think they have. Yeah, they have a lot more.
more
of it.
important paragraph that they have in here is that these firms are disproportionately the wealthiest and most influential, have been insured by the world's most powerful central bank. And this largesse is boundless and without conditions. Even JP Morgan writes, even if a second wave of outbreaks were to occur, the Fed has explicitly indicated there is no dollar limit and no danger of running out of ammunition. So
Yeah, so the Fed is going to take care of these guys no matter what, right? That's what he's saying? Well, that's what he's saying.
I guess, like, what have they ever shown to do differently?
Yeah, so let's keep going.
See that the financial system knows that they're completely taken care of.
Yeah,
because
that's it.
we have snapbacks and infrastructure in place in order to make sure that debt and all this other stuff is always going to be covered. When you have the Fed itself, Jerome Powell has made a plea to Congress. Please appropriate more money to actual citizens because they need to. We can take care of this thing at the top. We can't take care of all of the stuff down at the bottom. What happened after the too big to fail is we had all this infrastructure in place to make sure something like that couldn't happen. But the only institution that is capable of making sure actual Americans are distributed money towards is Congress. And Congress has not changed since 2008. They refuse to give pennies to any of these people. And it is so terrible because the entire financial system relies on money being spent, on people spending money with other people, and all of that eventually making its way up to the top.
See, there's such a disconnect because they don't.
Well, so what he's saying is it's Congress that's holding it up. They're the ones that have the authority to give money to people, not the Fed. The Fed can operate and do different types of bailouts.
They're not the ones, yeah.
And so when you say there's a
directing the money.
When you say there's a disconnect, it's like there are like 450 something members of Congress, depending on, the state you live in and the population. It's like there's a disconnect directly with the members of Congress and their constituents then. Like they don't, it's like we don't even have a second stimulus package in even in discussion.
Do you think the Congress, most of them, don't you think they're part of the wealthy group?
Well, right. But it's like even if you're a part of the wealthy group, you could still see economic trends if you pay attention. You know what I mean? And it's like, are they willfully?
So that's probably why, people like AOC or Bernie say the things that they do, but then when it comes down to a vote, it's like, what? What was that speech about? If you're not gonna stomp it down, then and it's never. I don't know what the problem is. There is a disconnect. So, and I think. And especially even with Congress or even and
it doesn't seem to be a disconnect between Republican and Democrat. It's like a disconnect between the poor and everyone else. Okay, let's keep going with the clip.
Well, the working class.
Yeah.
And
the Fed can replace this up here, but they can't just give people money. That's not their. I mean, it's literally illegal for them to do so.
Yeah, I mean, look, it says everything about the society that those mechanisms are all in place, ready to go, and the Fed is backed up the riskiest assets, which are held by supposedly the highest, most sophisticated investors. They're going to be just fine. They're taken care of, even though the idea was that these investments would be risky. That was the whole idea behind it. But not just in this crisis. I mean, you look back to 2008 and the government response. They have every reason to believe that our government is set up to make sure they will be fine. Right. And so that's why you see this unbelievable disconnect. And, even before this crisis, we talked a lot here about how those top-line economic numbers do not reflect reality for most of Americans, but it has never been more sort of jaw-droppingly clear than on the same day when you find out millions more Americans filed for unemployment, 20.5 million jobs lost in 1 month, that the stock market actually goes up. And as if that's not dystopian enough, we have another sort of dystopian hellscape story that we wanted to bring you. So sanitation workers in New Orleans have been striking, asking for hazard pay. They make only, I think it's $10.25 an hour. And
dang, $10.25 an hour. So I'll read the tweet. NOLA, New Orleans,
Louisiana.
Yeah, New Orleans, Louisiana, refuses to meet with the striking garbage workers. They aren't trying to hear us, says Woods. They don't care about us. They would let anything happen. If we were to get sick, they don't care if we spread the disease. Okay, and so let's keep going with the clip.
Well, New Orleans, they've been badly hit.
Sure.
One of the spots I haven't.
But they are essential workers. Of course.
Being treated essential doesn't mean non-disposable. Not.
Yeah, essential doesn't mean garbage.
are on the front lines handling Lord knows what, very unprotected. And so, they're asking for something reasonable, which is to compensate us for that added risk that we're taking. So they strike. And guess what? What the city decides to do, rather than working with these workers or getting them the pay and the protection that they deserve, they're using prison labor to replace them. That only has to be paid 13%.
So instead of...
So we'll let you guys out if you could clean up.
Instead of paying their striking workers or, providing them with gear, they just went to an even lower cost alternative, which was prison labor.
A lot of, anything made in the U.S.
Do you see?
Probably made by our prison labor.
This is your brain on capitalism.
It's really, it's really, I'm like, whoa. And they kind of make it seem like it's like an opportunity.
Like imagine if nurses went on strike and then the government decided to replace them with prison labor. How is this any different? It's like you. Anyways, okay, let's keep going.
What they were making.
They're making $10.25 an hour. And the city sanitation services says they make no apologies for this policy as a core element of our commitment to being good corporate citizens. So there you go. That goes to show
oh my gosh,
what they're
we're
willing
learning
to
bad
do.
things from the Chinese.
$10.
What?
Prison labor, like treating our prisoners. First we
maybe they learned it from us.
Oddly from geez, maybe.
All right, we got 2 minutes.
Oh, sorry.
That's right. He has a great quote. Gregory Woods, he's one of the organizers. $10.25 to pick up trash. Come on now. It's contaminated now with coronavirus.
Yeah.
Man has a point.
Out here risking their lives.
Just to get paid a little bit more. And again,
and if you dare dissent, what do? They don't listen to you. You don't have any power. They just sub in people who they can pay even less or even more vulnerable who can't complain at all.
And this is New Orleans and the state of Louisiana are bankrupt. They have no money. It's every state in America is. This is the literal definition of the time when the federal government has to step in order to make workers like this whole, give them hazard pay, federal standards, and take the burden off of New Orleans. I mean, New Orleans, we all know how much that city has gone through in the last 20 years. Yeah. And now they're bankrupt. Most people don't realize this. A lot of states have balanced budget amendments, which means that they rely very much on revenue. And when that revenue, like now, when there's no sales tax, is dead, then they legally have to fire thousands of workers. We are seeing mass furloughs of state. These people need bailouts immediately.
Right.
And it's one of these, again, what are we talking about? National debt and pension funds. And we can't take care of irresponsible states. Now is not the time for any of that. Yes, have states spent flagrantly and irresponsibly? Correct. But that does not mean that people deserve to lose their jobs because of it. It does not mean that people deserve to get sick when they're trying to pick up trash and just keep society running.
Right.
You want trash in the middle of the street? That's an easy way to make society break down. It's just a total abdication of leadership from the very top.
Right.
And it's Congress.
And what's
is.
McConnell floating? That states can declare bankruptcy, which means all the public employees,
And
all their
Chapter
pensions,
11.
all of that would get wiped out. I mean, that is just, to me, a disastrous, absolutely disastrous, really unconscionable, heartless approach that he is advocating for there.
Yeah, thanks, male Nancy Pelosi. So... God damn. Yeah, it seems like the people who are suffering the most from this are people who have to go out and work and are trying to get fair pay and better equipment. But it's the states are bankrupt. They don't have any money. They're not getting any help from the federal government.
Yeah, I don't know.
So there's a second video on that.
This is the time for the uprising. We should call ourselves the uprising.
The uprisers. They're the risers and we're the uprisers. Okay, so there's another clip on this. I think this guy actually wrote on it.
And friend of the show and executive director of the American Conservative, Johnny Burtka, he described this as, quote, the new class war comes for the economy.
He noted that class, more than partisanship, actually drives our response and approach to coronavirus. And Johnny joins us now via Skype to explain why. Great to see you, sir. We miss you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So just lay out the case that you were making in this article.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. I think when you look at the news, read newspapers every morning, you see them framing people's response to the coronavirus mostly based on their party affiliation. And there's a lot of hand-wringing about the divide between Republicans and Democrats on whether or not we should open up the economy. But what I do in the article is take a little bit of a deeper look at how the issue of class really separates people's response to the coronavirus. And I think it does it on two levels. The first, according to a study from the Federal Reserve Bank in St. Louis, shows that those most likely to lose their jobs during the coronavirus crisis are those with an average annual income of $36,000. Well, those with an average income of $75,000 are the safest from losing their jobs in the crisis.
So he said something really interesting. It's class more than partisanship that's going to show your response to the coronavirus. And if you're making less than 35,000, then you're likely going to lose your job. But if you're making more than 75,000, you're likely to keep your job. So that's why I thought it was interesting, because he gives a real economic argument on what's happening and why people are responding the way they are.
Also, people who can work remotely and work from home tend to make more money than those who are the essential workers that are on the front line. So there's an economic dynamic at play that could color people's response to the coronavirus.
One thing I wanted to talk with you about is about this growing movement, protests to open up the economy. And I think it's very wrong for a lot of liberal commentators out there to demonize people who do want to get back to work. But I don't necessarily think just reopening the economy is going to work. Why is there such a resistance amongst the professional, right to the idea that the government might be able to backstop those wages and assuage their concerns, business concerns, while also keeping everybody safe? Why does that seem so out of the cards?
Yeah, well, I think there's two things going on. I mean, there's one is the practical concern that we have $20-some trillion in debt, which is something to be legitimately concerned about. But at the same time, that's backstopped by an ideology that really just doesn't like to spend government money on anything, either to support the economy in any way, but particularly to support workers and families. And I think during an emergency like this, I think there is a moral obligation for the government to do something. Now, it's probably best if that's taken care of at the local level first, but when that local needs can't be met by the state or regional government, then it's up to the federal government to step in. And we saw them pass, several rounds of stimulus packages. But I think this could have been an opportunity to be bolder, to really implement some of the other policies that would bring about structural change to help the economy in the long run. And two areas where I think that would be most applicable is one in terms of industrial policy. I know Senator Hawley and Senator Rubio have been working on a long time on plans to counter China's 2025 plan to make American manufacturing competitive in the long run against China and to bring supply chains back to the United States. I think this crisis, more than anything else in the last 30 years, reveals the vulnerabilities of our globalized supply chains and the urgent need to bring those back to America. So why didn't the stimulus packages include an industrial policy? Right. Another issue could be family policy, whether you're looking at paid family leave or paid sick leave or other incentives to promote family formation. The family, to a great extent, is a built-in sort of welfare system. It's the first line of defense against crisis. Your family is there to take care of you before the government can. So why not take the opportunity to strengthen an institution that will, in the long run, lead to a less dependence on government? So here are two big opportunities, and it seems like they by and large, passed it up.
Yeah, well, and Johnny, in fact, the economy is being transformed just in exactly the opposite way that people like you and me and Sagar would want to see. I mean, we covered here 40% of small businesses saying they may have to permanently close over the next 6 months. What do you think that's going to look like in terms of our politics, in terms of, potential political realignment? Just fast forward and take us through. How are we going to emerge out of this thing?
Yeah, I mean, probably not well, because what it's going to do is it's going to lead to basically higher economic concentration, larger, bigger corporations, monopolies forming, and smaller companies having to close their doors. And this crisis hits home in a bit of a personal way, because my parents own a restaurant microbrewery in South Central Michigan, and they've had to lay off about 300 employees when the crisis hit. And because of the way that the PPP funding and bailout was structured, it's not particularly useful to restaurants, because it doesn't really make sense to hire all your employees back if customers can't come to the restaurant, right? And especially if restaurants, in the next week or month can only open at 25% capacity, that's not really enough to meet your margins. So they're in a real bind. Now, thankfully, they opened up this past week and were able to do takeout for the first time, and they saw a surge of people in their local community coming out to support them. But this can't go on forever, and there needs to be more creative solutions coming out of Congress, especially for restaurant owners and small businesses to weather the crisis.
Yeah.
So what she asked was, how do you see this turning out with like 40% of small businesses going under? And he says the same thing that Dylan Ratigan says. You're going to see the bigger companies are going to get bigger. And it's already happening with the private equity firms and the stock market doing well.
It's been happening, yes.
And
now they've got the cash to buy up all these ones that are sell for cheap. Or at least sell off their assets.
Yeah, cheap. So if the economics are any indicator, the classes are getting further and further from, the poor are getting crushed and the rich
Don't worry,
are
Musk will
getting
take
rich.
them to Mars.
No. Okay, let's get on with the clip.
I think that's absolutely right, Johnny. And Johnny, one last thing I want to get your take on, which is that if you'd asked me at the beginning of this crisis, I would have said this is the nationalist populist moment that everybody's always been waiting for. And yet, if you look, with respect to China, the conversation, all the rhetoric seems to have changed, but the policies aren't. Is that and if in the reality, PPP turned out exactly like you said. It got capped for some reason that we won't know. Essential worker hazard pay being proposed by Mitt Romney has not necessarily been championed by Mitch McConnell. Infrastructure plan was immediately kind of shut down by the Republican leadership. So at one of the most kind of populist moments in history, we don't see the Republican establishment having really learned much from 2016, have we?
Not at all. And I'm really fired up about, several weeks ago, I know Peter Navarro had been working on an executive order to repatriate pharmaceutical and medical supply chains. It was to take effect not during the crisis, but after the crisis. From everything that I gathered, this was about to be signed by the president, and now all of a sudden it's sort of disappeared, down the memory hole. And it's what happened. Right now is the opportunity.
Took it off
and it seems to me like the Republican establishment, whether it's Mitch McConnell or people in the president's administration that are more pro-Wall Street, that are, from Bush legacy hangovers, people don't really understand what's driving the populist moment in the country, have done their best to try to squash a lot of really good ideas that could have been implemented. So I think it's time for the White House and people in Congress who do get it to really double down on the promises that got Donald Trump into office and on the issues that are affecting the American heartland that they have an opportunity, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do something about.
And do you think it's too late at this point? Do you think we sort of missed the boat with the first stimulus, the phase, whatever we're on now? I mean, Mitch McConnell doesn't really seem interested in particularly passing anything else. As you said, now they're talking about the debt and the deficit. Is it too late to have a different response and come out of this in a better way?
Over the last 3 years, I would say that we've missed the boat probably a dozen times. The window to act has closed and been slamming shut. So, why not try again? That's all we can do is just keep trying. Eventually, something will stick. So.
That's it.
So, yeah, I guess at the end there, they were talking about how is this the time for like a populist moment to happen?
What's a populist moment?
It's like I guess when they're talking about like infrastructure or passing like PPE or passing like things for people, I think that just means like legislation directed towards people, not like bailouts for like corporations. And so actually like having I think they were talking about Pete Navarro repatriating the pharmaceutical supply chains. Is that what he said?
What does that mean?
I think that means it would become more public. Like the government would take control of it.
Like it becomes a national thing.
Mm-hmm. And then
why not?
And then it just disappeared
then
off his
when the
desk.
Government makes inventions and stuff, it can make its own money off of those inventions during its own patent laws.
Yeah, so
are they considering that to be do companies say that is what's it called, conflict of interest, that the government itself is making rules but it itself is a company that benefits? But
why do
companies do the same thing?
Why do you think we can't file our own taxes with the government? There are companies that lobby that the government, like there's a conflict of interest if citizens apply directly to do the taxes directly with the government. That's why we all have to do it through a third party.
Wait, why? Because I always thought that was weird too.
Yeah, because they lobby, because they argue that it's a conflict of interest.
Oh, but something's not right about that argument somewhere.
Yeah, you just get a bunch of dumb corporations pushing legislation to help their bottom line, and it doesn't make sense to anyone. And
it happens anyways.
Well, yeah, because they can buy off people with like Nancy Pelosi with IPO stocks.
So how does she get removed from her office?
Just vote her out.
Oh, so
someone has to beat her.
How many years does she get voted on?
If Congress, I think it's 4.
Every 4 years,
midterm elections. So those are.
So I learned from this midterm election,
2018.
That a lot of people don't vote for these things.
Yeah.
Almost no. So
that's why anyone can get in office if you.
Yeah.
You
this
try.
year was a big year because so many people were so mad that they're like, "What's going on?" They went on and voted, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's gonna? So maybe in 4 years, then there can be a lot of people changing.
If Silicon Valley could get their head out of their ass and make some decent software for the public sector, like who's running and like
make billions in like 2 days, they're just as bad as Congress. I mean, oops.
Yeah. You all suck. Okay, so
and yet we're still here.
The worst of the crisis is yet to come. Some good news for once. Because
that's the good news.
Because we're not talking about Nancy Pelosi. I'm just kidding. Yeah, let's see. The worst is yet to come for the poor, I guess.
President of the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis, Neil Kashkari, he's always had great analysis, and one of the things that we wanted to spotlight was his appearance on ABC News this week on Sunday. He talks about how the worst of the economic crisis is far yet to come, and what some possible responses might need to look like. Let's take a listen.
If this goes on for a long period of time, I think it's going to go on in some phases for a year or two. I think Congress is going to need to continue to give assistance to workers who've lost their jobs. I mean, as you said, it's really around 24% of people right now who are out of work today. And if this is a gradual recovery, the way I think it's going to be, those folks are going to need more help. Yeah, and the worst is yet to come on the job front, unfortunately. And then it really is going to be, as these states start to reopen and as businesses start to reopen, obviously we need them to reopen safely.
So there you have it. He says, and this is straight from the Fed, 24% unemployment is much more reality of what we are right now at this moment, 24%. And that the worst is yet to come. That means that means worse than the Great Depression. We're talking about 30% unemployment, and I totally agree with him, which is that there's this fantasy amongst people who want to reopen the economy that will have a V-shaped recovery, right? And much more, it looks almost like an L. That's essentially what's been happening is like it went straight down and then, I mean, maybe it trickles like a misshapen L that starts to trick up a little bit, but there's no V. And I think he's right. A year or two at running at about 75, 80% capacity, that means about 25% of the country will remain unemployed. And that level of long time removal of money from the financial system, you can't even begin to fathom.
And that doesn't even account for people who have lost hours, who are working part-time and want to be working full-time, like people who are underemployed, basically. It doesn't account for that at all. I was looking at the stats. Only 51% of American adults are working right now. So just like 51%. And that's the lowest that has ever been on record. So yeah, he's indicating that the real unemployment rate is a lot higher than the official stats that we know right now.
So
where do the prison labor stats fit in there?
I don't think they consider them as labor. That's why
We call them prison labor.
So it's like, it seems like the real unemployment number is probably close to like 49% then, because I mean, effective unemployment, people who have,
what was that? 47 million estimate?
Yeah, that was like 33% unemployment though.
Okay, 33.
And so
they're saying it's going to be closer to 50.
Well,
That's
I would
nothing.
say
Who is that guy?
effective unemployment, because like if you're not making as much as you used to, like even if your hours were cut,
Yes, then you're not making enough to be able to cover the cost.
Yeah,
You're
so that's-
still looking for employment.
that's like
You're-
half of the employed people just being gutted out of the economy, and it's like they've only released a single $1,200 check. It's like, what? How long until like?
You're just going to be deemed unessential.
Okay, well, let's keep going with the clip.
And I don't know that our government has wrapped their head around that. I mean, actually, I know that they have not wrapped their head around that. Talks have stopped about another relief package. I mean, first they offered like insulting ideas all the way around, right? Pathetically inadequate ideas for what the next relief package could look like. Today, those talks aren't even happening right now as we face this level of unprecedented unemployment.
And Playbook had a great line in their newsletter this morning, Politico's Playbook, and they're like, look, this Democratic thing, none of it's ever going to become law. It's just a show of like what we wish would become law. It's like, that's not how this is supposed to work.
Yeah, it's weird, right? It's like the numbers keep coming out and they keep getting worse, and it's like every politician is like ignoring it almost. It's like there are no talks about like stimulus or like UBI or
They're
what.
not affected by it.
That's the thing. It's like,
Are they? No, I guess aren't there? How is it that so many companies had to close? Like, the
NBA isn't in session.
How did the stocks keep going up? That I don't understand that. How did the company's values go up?
I don't know. Maybe the money printing machine at the Fed helped. I don't know. Maybe they're all ignoring it at the same time. Who knows?
And so, because if that many, it was someone. What did I?
Bitcoin went up too. Who knows? Okay, let's keep going.
Because everyone's like randomly shuffling their money.
There's supposed to be some actual negotiating going on. I'm not saying McConnell and those guys are negotiating in good faith or whatever. I don't think that that's happening. But there needs to be somebody doing something, and it's just not happening. And what has this shown us about our country? What's the unemployment rate for people in America who have like master's or college degrees? It's like 8%. What's the unemployment rate for people who are working class? It's like 35%.
Yeah. They're either out of work altogether.
Right.
Or if they are working, it's like horrible
8 hours
conditions,
a week. Right.
Putting your life on the line, no hazard pay, no PPE. I mean, it's like damned either way, right? Horrible circumstance. And so that's what we're looking at here. And I don't think we can wrap our head around what this will mean for our society, these levels of unemployment. It's not something that we've seen in our lifetime.
Right.
And part of the problem is, I think, why, you see on the right, you see the protesters are willing to get out in the street and risk their lives to reopen, which I think is a stupid and dangerous approach, but they're willing to like risk their lives to put that message out there. The left is so constrained, like there's no ability to mass organize right now, to mass protest context right now. So the best that we've been able to leverage is like, let's start a hashtag about $2,000 a month, or let's have another virtual roundtable about Medicare for all.
That's true. It's like, what can you do if you're angry? You can't go outside. Like, there's no news to be covered. Like, you just you literally.
Right, and you want to protest about going back to work? You can show up with guns.
No, man, they're sitting in parks and the cops are leaving them alone. Okay, let's keep going with this clip.
Meanwhile, behind the scenes, all the money to lead interests who want things to remain basically as they are, who are doing just perfectly fine right now. Look at the stock market. They have organized behind the scenes to run the tables.
Yeah, they're running the table. They're taking everything. They're laughing all the way to the bank. I mean, look, listen to people and believe what they say. JP Morgan, we covered this in an earlier segment on the show, is like, we are not worried about a second outbreak because the Fed will take care of us and our investors.
Because we're going to be fine.
Okay.
We'll be fine.
When somebody tells you that, believe them. And then when you talk to the workers, when you talk to people who are out of work, and you talk to families who can't even pay their bills, their rent, who knows how many people are going to even pay their bills, their rent this month? We don't have the data in on that. We did for April. It was almost a third of households. Bet you that's only going to go up. I mean, the cascading effects through our financial system. And it's just so frustrating for us. Nobody seems to grasp it. It's like, how is this so difficult to grasp? The solution is in front of your very eyes. Give people money, and they just won't do it.
Yeah, well, we've become accustomed to basically treating the working class as less than human, as disposable. And so the fact that they're suffering while, affluent professionals and anyone above that are doing fine, yeah, they're essentially invisibilized. They're essentially like sacrificed to the crisis.
I think she said it best. They're so used to dehumanizing the working class that it's like their fault they're suffering.
Yeah, it's like that's how they can feel okay. Why? How else would they be able to justify their actions?
Whack.
It's like when you say, well, the prisoners, why were they, they're there anyways. It's like, well, he didn't get a death sentence. He shouldn't have been beaten up and killed in prison, or stuff like that. It's like, what makes it right just because they haven't made it to millionaire status just yet?
Yeah, they'll only respect you if you can donate to their campaigns.
That's why I donate $1 to everyone. You donate $1 to everyone's campaigns, and then you show up to fancy dinners.
I don't think it costs $1. The Hillary Clinton one was like
there's really,
100,000
really fancy ones, but if you've ever donated in the past or volunteered, they'll invite you to fill in. They don't like empty seats, and so not everyone pays for those, and you get to be a seat filler.
Oh.
And then you get to meet all the people that are doing business in the city and doing blah blah blah.
Get to meet all the crooked politicians.
No, you get to kind of see if there are crooked ones in a city to know whether or not you want to play there. And it's like, dang it. I guess we're going in the middle of the desert, guys. I'm just kidding.
Unincorporated land. Okay. Well, there was a clip of Louis C.K. stand-up in 88. I haven't seen it yet, but I thought it could be fun to look at or to react to.
You haven't seen it yet, but you downloaded it?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Downloaded it?
So let's take a look.
This guy's a funny comedian, soon to be your friend. Please, a nice round of applause for Mr. Louis C.K.
Mike McDonald, folks.
88. 5 months before I was born.
Keep it going for Mike McDonald. What do you say?
31 years ago.
So you're doing good. It sucks out there, doesn't it? It almost sucks as much in here. I hate the summer. I hate the heat. I hate sand. Nice tan, huh? I mean, pretty much is what I'm talking about. That's my beef right there, is that I burn. 2 minutes in the sun and I burst into flames. It's just ridiculous. I hate it. Yeah, that's probably... Well, I just finished peeling from a burn. I had a face. It burned, peeled off. I have a new face. I had to get a new license. I used to be a Chinese guy. Thank you. Anyway, Stop. Now, that's probably the number one disadvantage to having red hair is that you burn. Now, the other disadvantage to having red hair is childhood. All of it. Because you can really take the nicest group of kids in the whole world, no matter how tolerant they are of other groups and other people, and you put a redhead in the room, they become the Hitler Youth, basically. I grew up with this better dead than red in the head. Carrot Top, Richie from Happy Days. Red on the head like the dick on my dog, I think is my personal favorite. I'm not sure.
Poor gingers.
It's my curse. It's been my curse ever since I bought that hair tonic from Bobby Brady, if you remember that episode. I don't know if you did.
Man, he's been doing stand-up for
I used to complain to my dad about it because it's like half his fault. And you know what he'd say? He'd say, you should be proud of your red hair. Think of it as a red badge of courage. I'd say, Dad, this isn't a red badge of courage. This is an orange hat of the damned. Is more like it. It's my curse.
Yeah, he's
I guess I'm a bit tense. I really did have a bad weekend. Friday night was a nightmare. It really was. It started around, I guess, 8 o'clock in the evening. I was in this bar doing like shots of tequila, chasing with Snickers bars, having a great time, minding my own business. And I see this jukebox in the corner of the room, so I go over there, and I'm about to pick a selection. I'm standing right next to the thing, and it starts randomly playing something by Barry Manilow, you know. And everybody in the room is looking at me like I picked it. 'Cause I'm saying, It doesn't end there. I came home. I'm kind of drunk, but the first my senses pick up the smell of chocolate chip cookies. See, my roommate Dave likes to bake them from scratch, like at 2 a.m. for no reason. So I followed my nose, and I get to this big plate full of chocolate chip cookies melting together into one big cookie, you know. And he's nowhere in sight, so I'm trying to take little pieces he wouldn't notice. Finally, I said, "Bad." I just ate all of them. Anyway, Dave comes in the kitchen. He looks at the empty plate, and he looks at me, and he says, "Hey, Lou, you know, I put like 15 grams of mushrooms in those cookies you just ate." I said, "Dave, you're joking, right?" And he said, "No, I've never lied to you before." And I said, "No, but your face has never melted like that either, man." So like half an hour later, I'm doing about 110 miles an hour down Storrow Drive on foot naked, and somebody said, why is it when people want you to be quiet, they always do this? They go, shh. What the hell is that? I mean, how to get to... There's something about that particular noise that makes me want to shut up when I hear it. So how to get to be the official shut up noise anyway? I mean, who picked it? Why did he pick that? If it had to be some random noise, why aren't people walking around going, You get the point. Who makes the rules? Like when you hitchhike, you're supposed to do this. Now, why does this mean give me a ride? I mean, what if you go to some other country where this means like pull over and beat the shit out of me or something? You know? There's certain things I know and I don't remember being told, like Humpty Dumpty. Okay, Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. The end, right? I'm not leaving anything out. No. So where in there do they mention specifically that he was an egg? How did this get inside my head? Why do I know this? Was it like a postscript in my, by the way, it was an egg in case you know. I don't know. I have thoughts like this because I get bored. One thing I found out, what you do when you get really bored is this really interesting thing. You go to the airport. Now, you ever notice at the airport they got those information booths? And very often there's nobody in there. So you just climb in there for like a couple hours. People come up and ask you questions. Can you tell me what a B terminal is? B terminal, no, I got no fucking idea, really.
He's like, I don't get it. This ginger's so weird.
I don't know. Did you guys, let me ask a question. How many people here by applause voted in the primaries? Wow. That's it? And the rest you're waiting until you can vote with a remote control for your TV? Is that what's going on? Are you Democrats?
Yeah. Wow, so current.
Republicans? Okay, well, how many people are just totally apathetic and don't give a shit either way? Look at that. That's almost a majority and a majority of the nation. So those people should have their own established party, shouldn't they? The Democrats, the Republicans, and the apathetics. With an apathetic candidate, this guy like on TV in sweatpants on the couch. I'll vote for me. What the fuck? Who cares? I'll make cable cheaper, okay? You know. I don't know who you're gonna vote for, Mike Dukakis. Well, Bush scares the hell out of me. This guy, when I watch him on TV, I just get this feeling what he's really saying is just like, just let me in there for a minute. Jesus. And Dukakis, his heart is in the right place, but he has some annoying habits. I don't trust a guy that refers to himself in the third person all the time. You know, he comes on TV and he's like, Mike Dukakis is a candidate that stands for peace and prosperity, and Mike Dukakis will be the candidate. Mike, it's you. Relax. Maybe he's not Mike Dukakis. Maybe he's just some random guy running his campaign for him. And then he'll win the presidency. They'll bring him out for the first time. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States. I've been getting really annoyed lately, but I found out that I'm a real prick. I did something really stupid the other day. I had no idea that I was this stupid. I had probably done it 100 times, and I caught myself for the first time. I went to this CVS to buy a hairbrush. Now I'm totally lost. I have no idea what aisle to go to. Finally, this girl with CVS on her shirt comes up and says, "Hi, can I help you?" And I said, "Yeah, can you tell me where I can find a hairbrush?" Then I catch myself and I realize, what the hell is this? I mean, this girl's probably putting herself through college by working at CVS, and here I'm going, hairbrush, hairbrush. You know, like she's gonna go. Aisle 6. So anyway, finally I get the hairbrush, I bring it up to the guy at the counter, I got my cash in my hand, like in the guy's face, and he says, "How would you like to pay for that, sir?" I'm like, "Oh, well, actually, I'd like to pay for it like this." I just bought a new car. I bought myself a Honda Prelude. Actually, it's an 84. It's a good car, though.
Wow.
One thing I hate about my car, though, I just discovered today is that the horn is broken. Now, this bothers me. It's not that I never use the horn, ever, when I'm driving. I never use the horn, but I like to have one working at all times. For one simple reason. I never want to be sitting in my car and get, like, shot in the back of the head or slam into a tree and not even get to do the old... That's really embarrassing. I really I never know how to deal with that. You know, it should be sewing or like something. I don't know.
A little bit.
By the way, just on the same thought, if a guy's driving through the forest and he smashes into a tree and leaves on the horn, nobody's there to hear it. Is he really dead? It's just okay. You don't know either. Good. All right. It's a good car. Otherwise, it's a good car. It's got a tape deck and a sunroof. It's nice to have both because you can have the sunroof open and crank like AC/DC and do this while you're driving. It's It's a fast car too, and this got me in a lot of trouble the other day. I was driving to upstate New York, and I'm screaming down this highway like 120 miles an hour, and I see a cop on the other side of the road. But I figured I was safe because he's on the opposite side of the road going this way. There's a ditch and a guardrail between us, so I figure it's like he's in another dimension, you know? Okay, so I just keep driving, but this cop pulls right in that ditch, goes over the guardrail, and does this Dukes of Hazzard move to get out of there, you know? I can almost hear the narrator from Dukes of Hazzard going, "Well, it looks like this boss got himself in a mess of trouble. Yeehaw!" You know? Jesus. So what we got here technically is a chase, because I'm not stopping. I don't want to meet the... But I'm prepared because I got this special tape, which is the background music to Starsky and Hutch and Beretta. So every time I get chased by the cops, I pop that in, you know, the old wow, 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 wow. 2 hours later, I'm being butt searched by a guy named Clem. Anyway, now this was silly. They put me in a jail cell, and before they did, they took away my belt and my shoes. They have to do that. It's the law. Do you know why they have to do it? So you don't hang yourself, which is pretty reasonable. But then they put me in a cell with these 3 guys, about 900 pounds apiece. One of them, his name was Fred. I know his name was Fred because it was carved in his forehead. Backwards so we could read it in the mirror, you know. Look at these guys, and it occurred to me if I really wanted to kill myself, I wouldn't need my belt or my shoes. Just wake up Fred like, "Hey, Fred, you fat shit, come on." I know, these things happen to me, and it's my own fault, really, because I'm an asshole, basically. And that's where... Any other assholes in the room, by the way? One right up front, 2, 3. Isn't it great? Isn't it? It really is. It's beautiful. If you are one, you should admit it to yourself just for your own good. Because once you admit it, you can take advantage of it and do anything the hell you want. Do you ever wonder that? Do you ever look at assholes and say to yourself, does he know? Or was he like walking down the street one day and he kind of went, I'm an asshole? Because they don't think like you. See, it gives them the special freedom. They realize their freedoms one by one. Once they, like, most people have this screening device that stops them from doing things. Like you, normal people, you'll be driving down the street and you say, should I cut that guy off? No, only an asshole would do that, and you don't. Now the asshole's driving down the street and he says, you know, if I cut that guy off, I'd get to work a lot earlier. Well, no, only an asshole would. Hey, that's what
More like, there's space. Why is that guy honking?
let's see, what else? I went to a boring high school, really. We even had a horrible football team, definitely the worst in the whole division. We even had a lousy nickname. I mean, we're playing guys called the Tigers, the Bears, the Vikings, and we're called the Chocolate Santas, which just doesn't work. I never had much luck with women. I've always had this situation where they think of me as a brother, you know? Because I have two sisters. One of my sisters is a yuppie. She's a young professional. The other one's a puppy. She's a fat, ugly pig. Anyway,
Oh my god.
Okay, it's almost 4:20. We got 20 seconds. What guy, and I'll explain why I play this clip. And
Just stop.
10
Don't
seconds.
go around flashing people. Now that you know it's illegal.
5, 4, 3, 2. Happy 420, guys.
We used to make it to 4. At least
made
we do
it.
2 now.
Dude, 4.
Do you think we're gonna make it through?
4? No, we did 3. 1, 22, 23, 24. Oh, yeah, 4.
4.
Oh my god. We'll probably do it again someday.
Yeah, this week it's gonna be cool, but I think it's supposed to be hot again next week.
So yeah, I
do it
played
outside.
the Louis C.K. clip because with all like this, like kind of the hypocrisy of the Me Too movement, like put away guys that like literally didn't do anything. He was just masturbated in a room, or maybe he like stood in the way of someone. I don't know the details, but he didn't touch anyone.
Yeah,
Right?
That's what I was saying. That's why I said exhibitionism is illegal.
Right, but I think
Don't
he
flash
also
yourself to
I think he
people.
according to Sarah Silverman's account, he asked. He was like, "Hey, I'm gonna masturbate if it's cool with everyone," and then he just did it. And
some people probably just didn't even move.
right, and so it's like, and then you get guys like Joe Biden, and it's like.
Yeah,
I don't know.
definition of like assault,
It's-
penetration, whatever. Like that's your bubble space, dude.
No, and it's like, I don't know what it is. It's just like there are people who are trying to take it seriously, but then it's like there are people who have had their like entire career ruined for doing way less. And I think that's the unfortunate thing about Louis C.K. is he was a bigger victim than his accusation.
Well, do you think? I think there's going to be a lot of those. I think there's going to be an overcorrection because there was so much that was hidden for so long. And so that overcorrection means even people who come out and like maybe would want to apologize, because I've heard, guys who were like, man, now that I'm married and I talked to my wife, I realized my mindset in college was really messed up. And then if they come out and admit to things that they did due to that mindset, it's really scary. It's just as scary as for the girl trying to come out and not trying to accuse, but saying something happened.
Yeah.
And then it's like having such a bad reaction makes it impossible for other people to tell their story on either side.
Right. Well, I think the important thing is not to wrap everyone in a blanket. You have to treat every case differently, right? It's like you can't say Louis C.K. is as bad as Brett Kavanaugh or Kevin Spacey because they were both in the Me Too movement. It's like, no, those are separate things. And it's like once you look at them separately, you can really distinguish like like what happened to them was either an overreaction or an underreaction. And I think in his case, unfortunately, it was an overreaction.
It's even like how people get tagged for being what's it called, the sexual predator list.
Yeah, he's
it's
not
really
that
messed up. No, but they will like if you get caught as a 16-year-old boy sending naked pictures between your 16-year-old girlfriend, you're probably as the man.
Well,
right?
the point
You know,
I wanted to
like,
make was I think you should come back.
He should. I think his PR person is smart in telling him just lay low for a minute.
Well, so
and
I
you'll be able to come
heard
back. Like,
he has he has a new hour like that he does like of stand up, and it's really funny according to like comedians who have seen it.
yeah, he's still
And
funny. Like, he
I
just
want
needs
to
come out and.
yeah, when we launch, so we're trying to create a content platform, and so yeah, I wanted to approach him to film it and see if he wanted to put it on there. Be like, you can resurrect your career with us.
I just feel like we need more like reconciliation between the both parties.
Yep.
Of like, you know, perpetrators or anyone. That's why there's so many rules about no relationships with when there's like a power, like student teacher or a employer employee, because one of them always feels less than to be able to speak up or, you know, or do something. But
All right. Well, on that note,
I think he's still funny.
Yeah, he was funny 31 years ago. He's still funny now. Thank you guys for tuning in. We gotta head out.
Oh yeah, I have to go to the stores.
Thank you so much, you guys. We'll see you tomorrow. And remember, if you don't have buds, we're your buds.
We're your buddies. Happy 420.
Have a good one. See you tomorrow.